The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
Station atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
It's Tuesday, January 2nd, Wednesday, January 3rd if you're on the East Coast or across the pond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, live from the Great White North in the Caribou region on top of the mountains that are quite snowy here in central British Columbia at SOR headquarters. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key, down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio to Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. We're all over social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott SOR. Try out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. We're right there. We're on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, we have a GoFundMe account going on right now. We're trying to raise funds to improve our broadcast system. All you got to do is go over to GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. That's GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. I want to say thanks to our latest donations. Dipper, Everett, make that Eldorado Everett, Kevin and Kevin's Beard, Rachel, the snarky one, Michael Mack, appreciate it, Cousin Gary, totally appreciate you guys digging on in and helping us out to create the new studio. Remember, that's GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. Now, if you head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, you can go to our store, do a little bit of shopping, read the Encounter online, where my latest blog is as well. Go to the news section. We've also got great videos from Tim Doyle's UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. This being our first show of 2018, we're glad to turn the calendar over with you. And as we get ready for a busy and exciting year for this show, it's hard for me to hold back my excitement. Before we talk about tonight's guest, I want to mention that we're adding a brand new feature to the show tonight. I want to mention this because in the final few minutes of the show, we'll have a brand new segment called The Thought of the Dave. I will be posting a daily question on my Facebook feed, and I want everyone to give their opinions. I will read some of them on the air. This way we have a little discussion of what's happening in our field on a nightly basis. So I'm looking forward to it tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, for the first 2 hours, Rachel Kirkland, the Modern Shaman, comes into the show for her monthly segment that we call The Spiritual You. Tonight, with Rachel, we're going to take a look at 2018 and how to spiritually prepare yourself for the year ahead. For many, including myself, 2017 was a tough year. And I thought 2016 was bad. But this way, with Rachel's help, we can actually check out how we can make 2018 be a little bit different. We don't want it the same. We're going to find that out tonight. Then in hour number 3, Elizabeth Anglin from Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport on Sundays will be by to say hello and continue the conversation. Rachel Kirkland, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Happy New Year to you, my friend.
Happy New Year! I love it, Dave. I didn't realize this is the first show of the year.
It is. It's that exciting.
That's massive.
I went into last night, and usually I take New Year's Day off because, even though the past couple of New Year's, literally, I've sat down at my office, trying to plan out what I want to accomplish for 2018, and I did the same for 2017. And, I look forward to having those nice, peaceful nights. Mrs. Spaced Out Radio was working at her job, so it was me and the little guy just kind of hanging out here, doing our thing. He went to bed at like 9 o'clock, so what else am I supposed to do besides prepare for the show? And that's what I was doing. So, yeah, I took yesterday night off, so you're show number 1 of 2018.
Woohoo! I love it. That's an awesome energy to start into.
Well, what did you do over the holidays? Fill us in.
Oh my gosh, you don't want my fill-in. It was like, I think yours is sounding better than mine. Mine was full of just like sick kids. If I'm being totally flat honest with you, we just went down this Christmas. Like it was massive sickness around my household. And nothing that sounds fun on the radio. Like it was just like sickness after sickness, and it's just been going around. It's funny because my family, a lot of them, they went to Israel for the holiday. We didn't. We stayed here, but even they got sick. It's like all around the world. Something's been going on. You sound totally fine, so maybe y'all didn't get it at all up there, but we were just hit with it here. That's what my holiday was full of. Was like everybody just in and out of sick beds.
I was full of anxiety because we went down to the coast to visit my parents over the holidays, and I
actually was thinking about you, about that, and your sister, and I was like,
no, it went,
you some energy there.
It went pretty decent. I'm not going to lie. It went way better than what I thought. I gave her a couple of shots, like during the family photo. I said, you got to go over there so that way we can continue the feud. Your family on that side, mine will be on this side because we got to continue this. So I got my shots in, and I felt good about that. But I'm kind of relaxed. I actually ended the night saying I would be more than welcome to have you guys come on up during one of my ghost hunts or whenever you want. The door is open. So I opened the door.
Wow.
I did.
That's awesome.
I went manly. I pulled out my man card and I used it on me.
That's a heart card.
Yes.
Man or woman, that is a heart card. That's just a beautiful
Oh,
face. That's good for you. Awesome.
Don't give me the heart card. I'm heartless. I'm heartless, man.
I don't believe that for a second.
Nah, I know. I just like to play that role. I do. It just works for me.
Well, I'm glad that just you were anxious, but all in all, like,
I was.
it came to balance.
I was very bothered by it, to be absolutely honest. I was very bothered by it, and I decided, you know what, screw it. I'm going to, it was kind of cool because two of my nephews had never met my son before.
How old were they, your nephews?
My one nephew...
Were they around the same age? Or?
My one nephew, my oldest nephew, is 28. And
okay.
he's been going through some personal problems dealing with his inner demons. And I'm proud to say that, he is winning. And I'm very excited about that. And, I haven't seen him this well in years. And I haven't talked to him in almost 7 years. And, my other nephew, my sister's son... the one that I wasn't talking to, he just was never around when I was around, so I hadn't seen him in a long time either. And so neither of them really got to meet my son. And I think the most important thing for me is my oldest nephew, Bryce. He came into my life when, my oldest sister had him when I was 15 years old. She's 10 years older than me. So him and I really grew up together, and I just love him so dearly. And I got to admit, it was very emotional for me to watch my little guy run up to him, not even knowing him, and just give him a big hug and say, "Hi, how are you?" So it was pretty cool. I was really it was one of those moments, and I'm very happy to have had that moment. Probably my favorite moment of the entire holiday season. That's for sure.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And I love how open kids are like that. You know what I mean? They just...
Absolutely.
They don't have our tainted kind of start to things. I love that.
Yeah, I was very happy with it. And, it's something that, I told my nephew, come on up, when he figures he's healthy. He's been, clean now from the demons for about almost a year now. And
wow.
And he is, he's working hard towards it. He's looking healthy, and knock on wood that God gives him the power to continue the fight, because it's going to be a long fight ahead of him, and he knows that. But he's ready for the battle. He's a tough kid. He's in the gym all the time, so he's got that big buff body going on, and hopefully that is what can continue. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, having a focus like that is huge.
Excellent.
A personal focus.
Excellent. So, how was your New Year's? Did Petey have his hat on for New Year's?
Of course. I love that hat. He has several. It's not just like one hat that he loves. I don't know if the listeners know his story about loving his hats, but yeah, he did. It was great. Yeah, we had a great New Year's. Like, New Year's was just simple and, kind of about like keeping things cleared out from 2017 and starting anew. This is a big shift of a year. So I feel like everyone is kind of feeling that energy come in. I mean, we had a super moon going on at the beginning of like the first of the year. It's just unheard of. So we had a ton of energy, and we just tried to utilize it all.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you're in a long-distance relationship with him, too. Like, you're in Texas, and I believe he's in California.
Yeah, we go back and forth. Yeah, I mean, that's, it's funny, just like when, you know how it is, like when you're older and you have families and there's things that you have to manage with relationships, it's like you just try to figure out, like, what would work best for us, not necessarily what is the norm, but what would work best for us and everyone that we're connected to. And so instead of moving everyone, we basically go back and forth. We decided to keep the two houses and go back and forth between the two.
Well,
so
you're braver than me.
Yeah.
You're braver than me.
It's a financial commitment to be sure, to have two places and to fly that often, because we're constantly just traveling.
Well, I hope you're getting air miles for this.
Heck yeah! You joking?
Good.
Yeah, we're doing all that, all the bonus miles and all of that. Yeah, that's definitely
Excellent.
The way you got to go when you fly that often.
Excellent. Well, let's get into tonight's show, because obviously people aren't here just to hear you and me, banter around and everything like that. Because
really,
no, I know. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. But we're hoping that you could answer some questions for us, because I thought 2016 was a bad year for me. Then came the nightmare of 2017. So a lot of people, from what I've noticed in reading comments throughout the year, is, I guess where I felt a lot better about myself was that I wasn't the only one having a very poor 2017. There were a lot of people out there, like nobody that I know actually liked the year. It just seemed tainted, and it seemed very, very, vicious. If anything was going to pop up, it was going to happen last year. And it, after starting out so good, and it seemed like for everybody, the year started out great, but all of a sudden, springtime started rolling into summer, and they said, yeah, no, we're going to turn this crap around. We're going to make this living hell for a lot of you. And that's really what happened. Like I'm reading like Tessa's comment here in the chat room. 2017 was the worst. So, Stephen R. Kelly from Australia, one of our great listeners. 2017 sucked. I lost my dad. A lot of people had a lot of loss this year, whether it was their family, friends, jobs, financial status. It was tough on a lot of people. So when we look to 2018, how do we get rid of the blackness that was of 2017? Because for a lot of people, it's not the question that I'm going to make 2018 a better year, Rachel. It's, I hope that 2018 isn't as bad as 2017 was.
Right. Well, it's like first things first is you have to have a closure to that energy. You know what I'm saying? Like before you can even look to 2018, there has to be that sense of like, just like what you said, like I need to finish out and make sure that this is not continuing on and moving with me into the next year. So that sense of closure, and that's just in general, for any time we go through some sort of trauma or intensity, there needs to be a sense of like, all right, I opened that door, now I'm going to shut the freaking door. Like it's completed, it's done. I need to have a sense of closure and ending to that energy. So that's first and foremost. Before even moving in or opening a new door, there's this sense of just needing to have closure and resolve to everything that went down. Now, depending on what that looked like for you, and it's funny because it's not that it was, well, at least for me, it's not that it was a horrible year, but it was a year where everything kind of came up and unglued and kind of in your face to the forefront. Like nothing could be hidden. Everything was like, everything was kind of forced and bubbled up to the surface in 2017. There was a sense of just, nothing being hidden. It was just the energy of purging, basically. And when you think of purging, it's like throwing it all up, of getting all that crap out. Everything that needed to come out or needed change or needed resolution or had any sense of friction in our life, it seemed like no matter what that looked like for you as an individual, it came forward in that year. It just bubbled up. And so everybody was kind of facing their own demons or their own fears or their own things that they hadn't faced for years or they thought they had dealt with, or just things, even if it seemed like they smack you out of the blue. It was a year like that where everything was just kind of bubbling up and in your face. So first and foremost is just needing to have a sense of closure to that year. We tend to, without realizing it, carry old energies around with us or carry old energies into our future plans just by our fears or just by, having had those experiences and not wanting to repeat them. But then we carry this energy of fear of not wanting, and then when we move into a creation energy of starting something new without realizing it, we kind of have these underlying patterns that are not wanting, are fearing that something that has happened in the past. And so we bring those in. So again, just first and foremost is this energy of needing closure and resolve to those things.
But a lot of people don't know how to do that. They don't know how to turn off the old and turn on the new. It's a very difficult place, especially if a lot of people who got absolutely hammered in 2017, and I'm not talking alcoholic-wise because, but they got, I'll speak for myself here, and I know other people will agree with this, okay? But literally, I felt 2017 was like going 15 rounds with Mike Tyson back in his prime, and my hands were tied behind my back. That's how I felt throughout the year. And it wasn't until, mid to late December where I actually starting to feel normal again. And a lot of people were like that. And it's very difficult for people to not be paranoid that same situation or that same black cloud is going to hang over them again.
Right. No, that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that paranoid energy, is those like underlying fears that they end up, when they're trying to create something new, they end up carrying it in with them with that. So the first thing in terms of closure is being very clear that this is like, just like you said you did about getting clear about what you want for the next year, just taking time to literally say, okay, what have I gained from this? Give yourself the end of the cycle. When you read like literature or you read a book or you watch a movie, there's always like the intro, right? Then there's the conflict, then there's a sense of resolution, right? You have to give yourself the sense of ending, okay? If it didn't already happen and there hasn't been a sense of that for you, you have to find it, okay? And create and activate the energy of closure or ending it. So a way to do that, one way would be to sit literally and just ask yourself, what did I learn from this? What was the moral of the story? Just like as if it had been a play or a movie or, like I said, a piece of literature that you read, like, where's the ending here? And even if it hasn't necessarily been created, like if that person didn't come back and say, oh, I'm so sorry, or you didn't have that from someone else, you can still give yourself the sense of closure by almost like a literary analysis. I keep using this analogy, but of looking back and going, what can I take away from this? Like, what's the end all here? How do I want it to end in terms of like my takeaway? So it gives you a sense of circular kind of energy of finishing it. There's a finished energy here of like, this is what I've gained from this. This will be my takeaway. It's had its place. Thank you. I'm done. You get what I'm saying? So literally just moving yourself into a mental space of like, what did I gain from this? What have I learned? And taking it as a chunk that's been finished and seeing it that way instead of like, an ongoing story. Give it an end.
Do you just shut it off completely like you would a tap, or would you, or a light switch, to put it bluntly? Because I know a lot of people who worry about things like this, Rachel, and they're not sure on how to turn that tap off without it dripping.
Well, again, that's why you have to have an ending to that story, okay? So, say, for instance, it was a really crappy financial year. Then you say, this is what I gained from you. When you're telling the story or when you hear it in your head, you always have the ending. You always have that. You always end with the energy of shutting the door. So you would say something like, this was a, crazy year for me financially, and, whatever it was that happened, if you went bankrupt or if you, whatever it was, you lost your house, something that seemed catastrophic energetically for you, then you say, but what I've learned from this is that, I'm never going to put all of my eggs into one basket. I've taken time to spread out my financial energy and put it in a lot of different places, whatever it may be, ending with every time that comes up in your head, instead of ending in this energy of fear or paranoia or ugh, or this, because anxiety has a very open-ended, and stress, it's that same energy. It's very open-ended. You just almost are turning up the broiler, but there's no sense of end or knowing where that heat is going. So if you put the top on the pot, you know what I mean, to keep the heat in, you end it with, even if it's a mental story that you're telling yourself or remembering, you end it with, but this is what I gained from this, and this is what I'm doing differently. So it becomes as often as it comes up, as that tap starts to drip water, then you have something that's the cap or the turn-off switch, which is the ending. So you have an energy that finishes it. Do you see what I'm saying?
I get that, and I understand that. But for people who've been beat up financially, they're gun shy. They are gun shy,
right,
and they are wondering how they're going to start paying their bills in January, let alone the credit card bills that they probably racked up for Christmas, because, let's face it, Christmas, for as beautiful of a holiday as it is, it's become very expensive and commercialized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, totally. We talked about that last time. Again, it's not that that's going to miraculously pay your bills. It's going to shift the energy and give you a sense of, I'm done with it. And it does. It changes it in your heart space. It changes it in your mental space, because instead of ending with this story that still feels open, that still feels open-ended, I don't know how 2018 is going to be, or I don't know, I went through all this, and it's it's this energy of who knows, the shoe could drop, instead of having that energy about the situation, it's choosing to end the story. And so it takes practice. It takes, a habit to give yourself a sense of resolution, because we're not used to doing that. Anxiety, like I said, and stress, and especially if, like you said, there are literal things like bills to pay and things like this, having that sense of closure to it. And if it's extreme, then I would recommend doing something like a ceremony that has a more extreme energy to it. So ceremony, it's just a type of designated time where you would either sit down with a piece of paper, you would write down these fears, or you would write down these paranoias or these traumatic events on a piece of paper and burn them. Give yourself a sense of I'm completely getting rid of all of this energy that I'm holding. And I don't know if we talked about this before, but I'm a big believer in transferring energy to different elements. Paper, is made of trees, and it's that grounding energy. So giving yourself a sense of really clear resolution, I'm going to put all my fears onto this piece of paper, and then I'm going to burn this freaking piece of paper. I'm going to get it away and done. And it gives you a visual reminder and a very clear, intentional energy of closure. So if it's been something that was very deeply energetically traumatic to you, that was painful or really hurt and you need a sense of closure, I would recommend doing kind of a little sacred ceremony, a space that feels like it gives you something visually to remember, like I've already laid that aside. It's like a funeral. There's a sense of visually having that closure or getting to say goodbye. And a lot of times we need that. If the year has been particularly hard, we need a sense of saying goodbye to that before we can open the new door to 2018.
Is it an emotional burden that we carry when bad years carry over? Or is it something that is, that is part of the universe, part of our timeline that we're supposed to go through?
I think it can be both. I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive. I think in all things, we carry what I'm going to say is useful, or what we find is still teaching us something, or that we're still, whatever is kind of like important for us, we do carry a little bit of that. And there's a collective energy as well as an individual energy to all things, so we are the individual going through it, but then there's also an energy of a collective that's also going through it. And that as we're processing, we're helping that collective energy process as well. So depending on, what level you're looking at it, I think both can be true.
But for people who are living through this, what is more the issue? Is it more of our own nature carrying it over, or is it more the spiritual timeline of the lessons that we need to learn?
I think it's both. I can't, I think it's both. And I think there's an aspect of sometimes it's just basic habit and patterning. As basic as that. Like sometimes we just have energetic patterns. And I think some of those are past life patterns that are very strong undercurrents that we don't necessarily, I don't want to say choose, but we're not necessarily in a very cognitive way placing focus on them or trying to kind of bring them about. But it's like this underlying current that still kind of plays out. A lot of those, I think, and, whether that's from 2017 or anything else, I think past life trauma or karma or whatever you want to call it, these past life patterns, sometimes they're kind of like the unconscious patterning that just plays out when we're not aware. And so I think sometimes that's going on as an additional layer. And a lot of times when people get in these energies where they're like, I just can't kick this freaking issue. I don't know what it is. It just kind of keeps playing out. And it's like, I think I'm done. And then it comes back and it's almost like this undercurrent that's continuing in. And so sometimes there's that layer, and then sometimes there's also just a layer of, like I said, habit from this life. We've kind of created a pattern for ourselves of fear or of, when we've had multiple experiences that have played out in negative ways, we have a tendency to fear that those happen again, or without realizing it, expect those negative things to happen. So we almost have to go against the grain and against the current to change that pattern to get ourselves into a place that creates something different, something new.
Is it a lifestyle change or just a mental change in order to flip that switch to seeking more positive in a brand new year?
I think it's both.
Apparently. Wow.
I'm going, both.
Well, if that's the way we're going, that's the way we're going.
Well, it's kind of like you can't have one without the other. You can't just mentally change and not have it come to fruition in your physicality, in your actual day-to-day life. Otherwise, it's not taking hold. It's not integrating. It's just in the mental mind. And so it has to be both. It has to be a change that occurs mentally, and also it will trickle into the physical. It will just naturally make things in terms of your everyday habits and practices change. And sometimes it has to go the opposite. Like if you can't change the mental, if you're a person that gets hung up in the mind a lot, then sometimes it's easier to change the physical first and to start from that direction and to change your habits and your practices and just to be really austere and like harsh with yourself about like, I'm just going to do a completely different routine. I'm going to start 2018 and I'm going to change up my routine completely to where you almost like shake yourself into a new paradigm. And then your mental mind is almost like has to rewire the neurology because it's like, what the heck is going on? I've never done this before. We've never done yoga. All of a sudden we're doing yoga. You know what I mean? Like, or something that you didn't do physically or meditation, or you're trying to put yourself into physical scenarios that bring peace or, you know, and you're doing it very proactively. I think sometimes that shakes up the neurology and it literally kind of rewires the brain when you're not used to doing that stuff.